exchanges running out of Bitcoin? Let's mine deep. Bitcoin exchanges are platforms where you can buy and sell Bitcoin. They're like online marketplaces for digital assets. The process of buying Bitcoin on an exchange involves creating an account, usually including documents to verify your identity for KYC and AML regulations, and then making a purchase. There are actually two types of exchanges: centralized and decentralized. Centralized exchanges are managed by companies and require user verification, while decentralized exchanges enable direct peer-to-peer trading with greater privacy and control over funds. The truth is, while Bitcoin exchanges provide convenience, they're susceptible to security risks. Users' funds are stored on the exchange, which means if the exchange gets hacked or faces financial problems, users' Bitcoin can be at risk. You have the FTX debacle, Binance, and Mt. Gox to prove it. There has been a huge decline on Bitcoin in exchanges. So some people use exchanges to buy Bitcoin, and there will only be 21 million Bitcoin. Are they running out of Bitcoin? In the traditional sense, no, they're not. They're not running out of Bitcoin. But there has been a noticeable trend of Bitcoin being withdrawn from exchanges, which is kind of good news. It's a misconception, and Bitcoin's price dynamics differs from traditional retail products. This means that more people are moving their Bitcoin into private wallets rather than keeping them on exchange platforms. While it doesn't mean exchanges will completely run out of Bitcoin, it can impact the available liquidity of Bitcoin for trading and purchasing on these platforms. This trend may indicate growing interest in holding Bitcoin for the long term rather than actively trading. Who trades Bitcoin? Unlike grocery stores, Bitcoin exchanges can't run out of their products. Instead, when more people buy Bitcoin, the price goes up, attracting sellers back into the market. And since the higher the price, the more institutional investors are more likely to purchase the asset. With Bitcoin being as powerful as it is, we have noticed the government seizures and interference. The DOJ. What would happen if the government were to ban exchanges? The reality is that even if exchanges were banned, people can still obtain Bitcoin through other means, like selling goods or services directly for Bitcoin. Bans could theoretically even increase Bitcoin's scarcity by limiting its available supply, potentially raising the price. Although certainly a government ban on buying and selling Bitcoin is not a bullish development. So why should you care? Because you should know how exchanges can empower users to take control of their financial assets when withdrawing, enhance their payment privacy and custodial security. So just to be safe, remove your Bitcoin off exchanges. Don't miss Frank Holmes Backstage.
Frank Holmes, thanks so much for joining us here on Bitcoin Backstage. How did the talk go for you? How's the first day Amsterdam treating you?
I think it's just great to be able to share my experience of creating Hive, the first crypto mining company to go public, the only one that's pure green, the one that's been most innovative in recycling green energy, actually, heating buildings 5 times the size for manufacturing, building greenhouses. So it's exciting, but I'm a money manager, and the creation of Hive was because I was frustrated in 2017. I couldn't launch a Bitcoin ETF. I have the famous JETS ETF listed in London, but mostly trades in New York City. It's listed in Mexico. It's the global airline industry, and gold, my gold ETF. So I'm known for this other world, besides Hive blockchain, which has now become Hive Digital. Why Hive Digital? Because we were the first to own our data centers, and we started with HPC, and now with ChatGPT taking off, there's a big demand for all our GPU chips, which we were using to mine Ethereum before proof of stake switch over, which is their biggest mistake ever.
I agree, Frank.
Well, they lost 30 million kids that went to bed, turned on their gaming machines to mine 1 to 2 Ethereum a year. That was wallets, and that was economics, and that's the flow of money. I believe that proof of stake was a big, big error. But AI allowed us to go where we're growing dramatically now.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, you can use those GPUs to get the AI going, right?
Yes, and we bought $70 million of NVIDIA chips 18 months ago, And we said these NVIDIA chips that we bought aren't just mining Ethereum, they're for the future of AI. And if you go back in 2019, I was the chairman. I took the first AI company public in Canada for using the data to analyze gold properties. But today I really want to share a message with everyone.
Sure.
And that message was the history of common law started in 1215 with the Magna Carta. And it grew. It wasn't a straight line over 800 years ago. And it was really the separation of all the land and assets owned by the state into private property. And it was also human rights for the first time. So you have to, Bitcoin is all about property rights, private property rights. And you need to have private property rights to have human rights. And it's like this massive intellectual disconnect that they are so joined at the hip. And it's not to be anti the government as a whole, but it's to really challenge where the civil law and state law or agencies are trying to take over all your assets. It means only a matter of time before they take over your human rights.
How do you see the regulatory bodies, making their moves here? What do you see as next for the mining industry and for the Bitcoin industry and as a whole?
Well, the big negative started with climate change fanatics, and those fanatics were spreading FUD. Like the consumption of electricity to mine Bitcoin was the Portugal. It was just so off base, and I think that narrative took you down into distraction. So you have to re-educate. And we know in Sweden, a lot of the politicians, they put a tax on energy for data centers, but they thought the internet was free.
Right.
And they thought that gaming, and yet they're trying to educate them that Minecraft wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the data centers.
Right.
And Netflix wouldn't be there without the data centers. So I think we have a big job of educating people about human rights and private property rights are joined at the hip, and the importance of this sort of innovation of going forward. And you need to have these data centers that are not only Bitcoin mining, that network of 46,000 nodes, 13,000 hyperactive nodes. There's only 250 countries. So talking about a permissionless global network, and all of a sudden now we're able to put art on it and contracts, I think it's bigger than Ethereum's going to proof of stake and all that sort of push by Ripple.
I think it's interesting that you brought up these climate change fanatics, which I agree with, using Bitcoin as sort of this load management tool and, really helping incentivize and monetize and modernize the electrical grid. How do you sort of balance those two opinions? Because I do as well, but it's always interesting trying to talk to folks on both sides.
We took and I really tip my hat to Michael Saylor in his leadership and the stewardship of creating the Mining Council and having all the data to come in to basically push back against the FUD in a very balanced, formal way. We took those 30 minutes of data and slideshows and distilled them to 3 minutes and then put them into Swedish, into French, into other languages that turn around to be sent out in those countries and to governments and agencies to be more informed, because I don't think they're going to sit there and listen to 30 minutes. So we're trying to do everything Hive to educate in many different languages the importance of the consumption of energy and how we balance the grid. We were the first to balance the grid, and we still get paid to do that in Sweden. But when you go to the AI world, you can't do that. You have to have 99.99% of it working. So the air traffic controllers, they're not going to all of a sudden, sorry, we have a download here, we can't land. So this idea of giving back and informing people what you can do with a Bitcoin mining center is so exciting. So the idea of what Bitcoin can do and Bitcoin mining facilities is incredible.
Here's a quick news recap of the week. Jack Dorsey, the creator of Twitter and Block CEO, leads $6.2 million in investment round for a decentralized Bitcoin mining pool. This funding will fuel the launch of Ocean, a new initiative aiming to decentralize Bitcoin mining on a global scale with a transparent, non-custodial mining pool. Not only that, but he turned Stacy Herbert and Max Kaiser into Nostratus. Go Jack! And as the industry eagerly awaits the SEC's decision for a spot ETF approval, the former head of the New York Stock Exchange and CEO of Bullish Tom Farley shares his growing confidence in Bitcoin's future trajectory, especially upon the potential approval for the ETF.
Everyone acknowledges Bitcoin is not a security, including the regulators. Money will flood in to the industry with the Bitcoin ETF. It's just easy to buy. People believe in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to be here. Bitcoin's a great invention. It just is. It is a store of value.
Not just that, with investors eyeing the potential approval, the optimism fueled by a recent slowdown in economic activity has contributed to Bitcoin's 40% rally since October and a surge of more than 130% in 2023. And this week, Bitcoin rose above 38,000, driven by expectations of a potential cut in borrowing costs by the US Central Bank due to declining inflation. Meanwhile, MicroStrategy raised up to $750 million to buy more Bitcoin. The company acquired an additional 16,130 Bitcoin for $593 million. That's crazy. They hodl 174,530 Bitcoin with an average price of $30,252 per Bitcoin. If you're not bullish enough on Bitcoin, a study from Unchained Capital showed that 1 in every 4 Americans own Bitcoin. That means that a quarter of the US is orange-pilled. Keep stacking that Bitcoin stack before it's too late.